Welcome to JK Tells a Story, where real-life dramas unfold. Sit back and enjoy today's tale. Once I lived in blissful ignorance, believing wholeheartedly that my marriage was built on solid ground. Reality, however, has a way of shattering even the most carefully constructed illusions. It turned out that my wife Sarah was living a double life filled with deception and betrayal. My name is Michael Thompson, though my friends call me Mike. I'm a man who believes in taking care of himself. Spending 5 days a week at the gym has kept me in good shape at 6 feet 3 inches and 192 pounds. 8 years ago, I made the bold decision to leave the corporate construction world and start my own general contracting business. It's been a rewarding journey, building custom homes and commercial projects throughout Georgia and the Southeast. Sarah continues to work at Southeastern Regional Medical Center, one of the largest hospital systems in our state. She's devoted an impressive 24 years of her life to the same organization, starting as a medical records analyst just a month after our wedding. About 5 years ago, she transitioned to her current role as continuing education coordinator for the hospital's nursing and medical staff. The healthcare industry's rapid changes and regulatory requirements mandate that she attend at least 20 days of professional development conferences and certification programs annually, often in different cities across the country. At 46, Sarah maintains her striking appearance. At 5 feet 8 inches and 118 pounds, she doesn't look like someone who's given birth to 2 children. Every morning at dawn, she laces up her running shoes and joins a group of 6 other women from our neighborhood for their daily 6-mile run. It's an invigorating routine that's kept her in excellent shape. Our daughter Madison is 22 years old and recently graduated from Florida State University. Following in her mother's footsteps in the helping professions, she became a dedicated first-grade teacher in Naples. Running has always been a family activity. Madison joined her mother's running group when she was just 14. I'm pleased that she appreciates the craft beer I brew as a hobby. She even found a beer enthusiast club in Naples and became an active member. Whenever possible, I enjoy attending their meetings with her. Our son Braden is currently 21 and a recent graduate of the University of Florida. He continues his educational journey with passion and determination, pursuing his master's degree in construction management. Braden is an excellent student who's expressed interest in joining my contracting business someday. However, I've made it clear that he must first gain valuable experience working for other construction companies for at least 5 years before I'd consider bringing him aboard. I firmly believe that real-world experience outside the family business is crucial for his professional development. Sarah has never shared my enthusiasm for beer brewing. She finds the aroma unpleasant and often complains about it permeating our house. Whenever I plan to start a new batch, I carefully schedule it during her conference trips. She's currently in Dallas for a week-long medical education conference, which gives me the perfect opportunity to brew a refined English brown ale. Life seemed to have reached a comfortable plateau, but I had no idea that significant changes were lurking just around the corner. Last Wednesday evening at 8:30, Ryan, a member of my beer club, called asking if I could pick him up at the airport. Naturally, I agreed without hesitation. While waiting in the baggage claim area, I suddenly spotted 3 people who looked familiar. They turned out to be Sarah's colleagues from the medical center. Curiosity got the better of me as I wondered why Sarah wasn't among them. I pulled out my phone and called her office line, which was unusual since I typically contacted her on her personal cell phone. To my surprise, her office voicemail greeted me with an unexpected message. "Hello? You've reached Sarah Thompson's voicemail. I won't be in the office until next Wednesday as I'm attending a continuing education conference in Dallas. I won't be returning home until Friday. Please leave a message and I'll get back to you on Monday." Seeing Ryan approaching, I walked toward him and explained my confusion about the situation. Ryan suggested I contact Derek, another member of our beer club who works as a detective with the local police department, to get his professional opinion. Before calling Derek, I decided to phone Sarah directly. When she answered, I tried to maintain a normal tone, greeting her warmly and saying I just wanted to hear her voice. "I'm looking forward to holding you again," I said. "My flight Friday should arrive as early as possible, and I can't wait to fall asleep in your arms. Will you be able to pick me up at the airport?" "I wish I could, but I have to stay for the final certification session," she replied. "It wouldn't be fair to leave early when we need the continuing education credits. I love you, and I'll see you Friday evening." This was the first time Sarah had ever lied to me so directly. Despite the late hour, I decided to call Derek. After discussing our upcoming beer club meeting briefly, I got to the point. "Derek, I suspect Sarah might be having an affair, and I need some advice." Derek responded sympathetically, expressing his willingness to help in any way possible. "I think Sarah is cheating because when Ryan asked me to pick him up at the airport, I encountered 3 of her colleagues from the medical center who were clearly returning from their trip. They had luggage and looked like they'd been traveling all week. Moreover, her office voicemail clearly stated she was in Dallas until Wednesday and wouldn't return until Monday. But when I spoke with her just now, she said she'd be in certification sessions until Friday." Derek listened patiently to my story without interrupting, then asked how often Sarah traveled for work. "About twice a quarter," I replied. "Does she always travel with the same group?" "I'm not sure, but each conference she attends lasts 5 days. As far as I remember, she usually leaves Saturday morning and returns Friday evening." "What does she typically do when she gets home?" "She's usually exhausted and takes a long bath before going to bed. Saturday mornings, she starts by doing laundry. We often go out for dinner and spend intimate time together to reconnect after her time away." Derek realized something suspicious was happening and suggested I contact Mark Williams, a private investigator he knew who specialized in infidelity cases. I thanked Derek for his valuable advice and said I'd contact Mark first thing in the morning. As soon as dawn broke, Mark Williams called me. Apparently, Derek had taken the initiative to contact him and explain the situation. After recounting the same story I'd told Derek, Mark asked some probing questions. After a thoughtful pause, Mark asked, "You've been happily married for over 24 years. Are you really prepared to learn the truth?" Intrigued, I asked him why he posed such a question. Mark replied cautiously, "Based on my experience in situations like this, most marriages end in divorce. You need to answer some important questions for yourself. How much information do you really want to obtain? How far back do you want us to investigate? What's your budget for this investigation? Are you prepared to deal with whatever we discover?" I was shocked by the gravity of the situation and sat in silence before finally speaking. "Mark, I need to know every detail: when, where, and with whom. Look as far back as necessary. I'm willing to spend whatever it takes to uncover the truth. If I've been deceived, I want to understand the full extent of it." We decided that Mark should contact a reliable colleague in Dallas who could investigate Sarah's activities there. Additionally, his team would research the conference schedules and verify the details of her business trips. He also instructed me to contact the 3 colleagues I'd seen at the airport while we waited for more information. While waiting for answers, I had to carefully search our house for any suspicious items, though I wasn't exactly sure what to look for or where to start. I decided to exclude the living room, dining room, kitchen, and the kids' bedrooms from my search, starting instead with Sarah's dresser. I didn't find anything unusual among its contents. Everything seemed familiar. However, after opening the closet door and seeing numerous shoe boxes, I decided to shift my attention to the bathroom. Unfortunately, there was no hidden information from Sarah in the bathroom either. I returned to her closet, determined to find at least some clue. Starting with the hanging clothes and carefully examining all the shoe boxes, I searched for anything that might seem strange or suspicious. Despite thoroughly searching our bedroom, the guest bedroom, my home office, the garage, and even the attic, I still hadn't found anything that moved me closer to understanding the situation. Around 5 p.m., Mark finally arrived and quickly installed surveillance cameras in strategic locations throughout the house: the bedrooms, office, and kitchen. He also placed audio recording devices in key areas. After taking all these security measures, we drove to the airport where we located Sarah's car in the long-term parking garage. Mark discreetly installed a GPS tracking device and placed a voice recorder under the front seat. Back at the house, Mark and I shared a light beer while he brought me up to date on his findings. The schedule for Sarah's medical conferences varied in duration from 3 to 5 days, depending on the venue and certification requirements. For example, the Dallas sessions were designed for 3 days, starting Monday and ending Wednesday. Her colleagues Tom, Paula, and Beverly had flown out Sunday afternoon and returned Wednesday evening. The conference materials and equipment were delivered to each venue a week before the scheduled sessions, but the medical education coordinators weren't responsible for setup or logistics. Each conference center had dedicated staff who handled those arrangements. As I sat there trying to control my growing anger, my thoughts turned to my father, who always emphasized the importance of keeping emotions in check. He believed that clarity of thought could only be achieved when anger was under control. Frustrated, I burst out, "She's been lying to me this entire time. She needs to face consequences for this deception." Turning to Mark, I asked if he'd found anything during his preliminary investigation. "Unfortunately," he replied, "I didn't discover anything immediately suspicious. The only thing we noticed was that Sarah frequently does laundry immediately upon returning from trips." We discussed this observation and eventually decided that Mark would arrange to examine her luggage at the airport while I would find a way to disable our washing machine so she couldn't immediately start a load when she returned home. Just before Mark left, he told me that his contact in Dallas was positioned at Sarah's hotel and would provide a full report in the morning. After Mark departed, I realized I couldn't sleep in our bedroom and chose to spend the night in Braden's room. Needless to say, I slept very little. Trying to maintain my usual routine and distract myself, I went to my construction office the next day to review some project plans. Mark and I had agreed to meet at my house that afternoon. Mark arrived at 2 p.m. carrying a folder of documents. The report from our Dallas operative came via email with attached photographs, he announced. Mark produced a photograph of 6 people gathered around a table in an upscale restaurant. There were 3 women and 3 men, all sitting in mixed pairs. "Do you recognize any of these people?" Mark asked curiously. I stared at the photo for several minutes before replying, "The only one I can positively identify is Sarah. To help me see better, he handed me individual photos of each person. I studied their faces again in silence, taking time to examine the details carefully. Handing Mark one of the photos, I said, "This person seems strangely familiar, but I can't place where I might have seen him before." While we examined the evidence, Mark shared some disturbing information. Security cameras were installed on all floors of the hotel, covering the corridors. We obtained access to the footage. We began studying the next series of pictures, which showed the group leaving the restaurant, entering the elevator, and eventually getting off on the 7th floor. The women went to room 707, while the men went to room 709. Friday morning at 10:29, photos showed 2 men leaving room 709. Additional pictures captured them exiting the elevator, walking down the hall, and leaving through the front entrance. These images suggested either a professional or friendly relationship, not necessarily a romantic one. According to Mark's investigation, they went to a nearby restaurant for lunch, where each paid their own bill. Afterward, they returned to the hotel, where additional photos showed them carrying luggage from their rooms to the elevator. Each then went to the front desk to complete the checkout process. With a serious expression, Mark met my gaze and asked, "Mike, I have to ask you again. Are you absolutely certain you want to know all the details?" Without hesitation, I replied confidently, "Yes." Mark hesitated for a moment, maintaining eye contact, then continued. While investigating, we discovered that the Dallas operatives, working with hotel cleaning staff, gained access to both rooms 707 and 709. They documented everything thoroughly. He paused before delivering the crushing blow. It was discovered that rooms 707 and 709 were connected by an internal door. To collect evidence, bedsheets were removed and sent to a laboratory for DNA analysis. Used glasses were carefully bagged for fingerprint analysis, and waste materials were thoroughly examined. Mark's voice became more somber. According to our operative, there was clear evidence of intimate activity in both rooms, with signs of use on all beds. However, to determine Sarah's level of involvement, we need to wait for the laboratory test results. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What do we do next? She should be back tonight. Let's start by disabling that washing machine. We moved the appliance away from the wall and disconnected one of the wires to the motor. Mark offered me this simple task, giving me time to process what I'd learned. Back in the kitchen, Mark asked if he could take a DNA sample from me and requested that I find hair samples from both children. I sat down heavily and asked, "Why do you suspect the children might not be mine? You wanted complete transparency, didn't you? This is just standard procedure on our checklist. We only need one hair strand from each person." Mark carefully packaged my sample in an envelope marked 1, then Braden's in envelope 2, and Madison's in envelope 3. We managed to obtain a strand from Sarah's hairbrush, which we numbered as 4. These samples will be sent to the laboratory tomorrow morning, Mark explained. He also mentioned that his contact at the airport would attempt to delay Sarah's luggage, potentially causing her return home to be complicated by missing baggage procedures. Our conversation then shifted to how I could act normally around Sarah. Would I be able to warmly greet her, embrace and kiss her, patiently listen to her stories about the conference, take her to dinner, and maintain intimacy? How long could I keep up this charade convincingly? Mark warned that his team needed time to collect and analyze all evidence, cautioning that it might take several months to fully understand the scope of Sarah's activities. Could I remain calm during this extended period? I assured him of my commitment to uncovering the complete truth. Mark suggested I plan a 3 or 4 day business trip to visit some construction sites out of town, allowing Sarah to lower her guard. He hinted that she might make mistakes during this time. As we discussed ways to gather information discreetly, I suggested her briefcase as a potential target for surveillance. Mark acknowledged this wasn't a perfect solution but was better than nothing. He left a small recording device for me to attach to her briefcase. As he prepared to leave, he reminded me to look for any suspicious stains on Sarah's clothing if I had the opportunity. Later, on the back patio, I contemplated Sarah's upcoming laundry routine, though I found nothing to definitively confirm my suspicions. Just before dawn, Mark called to inform me that Sarah's luggage had been successfully intercepted and delivered to the laboratory for analysis. He once again emphasized the importance of staying composed when Sarah returned. When Sarah finally arrived home, her usual travel fatigue was compounded by frustration over the airline's mishandling of her belongings. She was particularly upset about 2 pairs of professional blazers she'd recently purchased that were missing from her luggage. "Everything else can be replaced," she sighed, "and my essential items were in my carry-on." Seeking comfort, she embraced me tightly, expressing her love and joy at being home. I hugged her back gently, expressing my own affection, though my heart was heavy with the knowledge of her deception. After some tender moments, she headed upstairs for a relaxing bath. Meanwhile, I discreetly attached Mark's recording device to her briefcase and settled in front of the television, reflecting on the complex emotions I was experiencing. Despite everything I'd learned, I couldn't shake the feeling of genuine love emanating from Sarah. Her travel weariness and slight irritation with the luggage situation seemed authentic. This contradiction between her apparent affection and her secret life left me deeply conflicted. Sarah overslept Saturday morning and hadn't started the laundry before her shower. While waiting for her, I found myself reluctantly examining her clothing and the laundry basket, feeling uncomfortable about invading her privacy. Despite my amateur investigation, I found nothing obviously suspicious. After her bath, I went downstairs, made coffee, retrieved the newspaper, and waited for Sarah's appearance. As I poured my third cup of coffee, she entered the kitchen with a serene expression, wrapped in her bathrobe. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she greeted me cheerfully. "How about some coffee?" I offered when she appeared. She smiled gratefully. "Yes, please. I'd love a cup. Maybe I should lose luggage more often if it results in such wonderful service at home." After our shared breakfast, I went outside to attend to some business matters. A few hours later, Sarah mentioned her plans to visit the grocery store. I politely declined her invitation to join her. "No thanks. While you're out, I plan to transfer my English brown ale from primary to secondary fermentation." During dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, we engaged in what seemed like normal conversation, sharing impressions of the past week and discussing upcoming plans. I spoke about a recent trip to inspect construction sites in Nashville, and she expressed happiness at being home. "These conferences are exhausting," she admitted. "I really value the opportunity to relax at home afterward." She also mentioned that if her luggage was still missing by Wednesday, she'd go shopping after work to find suitable replacements. "Honestly, except for those blazers I've had forever, I hope they find everything," she said with a grin. I found myself sharing details about my latest beer brewing project, trying to maintain normalcy while my world felt like it was crumbling beneath the surface. We decided to call it an early night, and I packed 2 cases of my homemade beer before departing for my planned trip to Nashville the next morning. The journey to Nashville lasted about 4 hours, but I genuinely enjoyed the drive as it provided solitude for reflection. Typically, my thoughts during long drives revolved around construction projects and business matters, but on this trip, they were solely focused on Sarah and our marriage. Lost in thought, I was surprised to realize that 2 hours had already passed. I decided to call Mark for an update. "Mark, tell me honestly, what does your intuition tell you?" After a moment's pause, Mark replied, "I've discussed this extensively with our Dallas operative, and we're certain that Sarah has been involved in multiple affairs for quite some time." He elaborated on their observations, indicating undeniable evidence of intimate relationships between Sarah and others in the group. Mark's final words emphasized the need to make crucial decisions regarding Sarah and the other group members. Following that conversation, I contacted my attorney, David Richardson, considered the best divorce lawyer in Georgia. After briefing him on the situation, he assured me that his colleague would contact me soon. After settling into my hotel room, I called Sarah to inform her of my safe arrival, then confirmed plans for a site visit with Frank, a local subcontractor. Around 9:30 p.m., when Mark called to check on me, I informed him that I'd provided his name to my lawyer. Mark found it interesting and mentioned David's formidable reputation in divorce proceedings. Sarah sounded tired when I spoke with her and expressed her desire for a resolution to the luggage situation. I assured her I was ready to deal with whatever came next. Tuesday, I spent the entire day inspecting construction sites with Frank. Around 1 p.m. Wednesday, Mark called to inquire about my schedule. I informed him I was free until the end of the day and planned to return home Thursday morning. At approximately 2 p.m., David Richardson contacted me. I briefed him on the current situation and was relieved to receive his approval of our investigative approach. We discussed potential next steps, focusing on evidence gathering and my ability to maintain the facade of normalcy for several months. David informed me about Georgia's divorce laws, explaining that while the state allows no-fault divorce, proving adultery would provide advantages in asset division and potentially custody arrangements, though our children were adults. After our extensive discussion, I realized I needed to carefully consider my approach to divorce proceedings. Wednesday evening at 9 p.m., there was an unexpected knock on my hotel room door. To my surprise, Derek and Mark were standing there. I immediately inquired about their unexpected visit. "I have some difficult news to share in person," Mark replied. "Derek doesn't know the specifics yet, but I thought it would be helpful for you to have a friend present during this conversation." I invited them both in, sensing the gravity of the situation. "I want Derek to stay and hear this news," I decided, meeting Mark's eyes as he prepared to deliver what I sensed would be devastating information. The test results confirmed Sarah's active participation in group activities. Mark began slowly. DNA evidence from all 6 individuals was found, with clear proof of Sarah's involvement. I was stunned, struggling to comprehend the full scope of the situation. In a moment of disbelief, I closed my eyes, attempting to regain my composure and suppress the rising anger within me. When I finally found the courage to open my eyes, I expressed my disbelief at this unimaginable betrayal. Mark, with a slight cough, revealed something even more devastating. 2 of the men in this group are the biological fathers of Madison and Braden. The news hit me like a physical blow. I erupted with demands for explanation. "It's inconceivable that neither Madison nor Braden are my biological children, let alone that my wife has been engaged in long-term affairs throughout our marriage." Mark accurately assessed the severity of the situation, acknowledging the profound consequences this would have on everything I'd believed about my life. My once perfect world was crumbling, and I struggled to navigate the emotional turmoil as my feelings fluctuated between shock, anger, and grim determination. Derek and Mark provided much-needed support. Their presence helped anchor me as I grappled with these overwhelming revelations. With the necessary evidence in hand, we strategized the most effective approach to hold everyone accountable. We discussed the option of a no-fault divorce, which would expedite the process and spare us the public humiliation of a drawn-out court battle. Despite my initial desire for a contentious legal confrontation, Derek, Mark, and David convinced me of the practicality and efficiency of a no-fault divorce. We gathered in Mark's conference room to discuss our next steps, including obtaining additional information, determining the best course of action, and seeking appropriate resolution. Curiously, I asked Mark if Sarah had engaged in any suspicious activities while I was in Nashville. "Sarah maintained her normal routine," Mark replied. "She didn't engage in any inappropriate communications or activities." Continuing our discussion, Mark mentioned that they'd been able to trace the activities of the 6-person group over the past 5 years. Interestingly, while the core group remained consistent, there were variations in room arrangements and occasionally in group composition. Most often, all 6 people were present, but there were instances when the group changed. Sometimes one woman would be present with 3 men, forming a group of at least 4 people. I didn't expect such extensive deception, and my despair began to show as I struck the table with force. "I want you to thoroughly investigate this entire group," I demanded. "I need to know their marital status, the duration of their relationships, and whether the children of these individuals were fathered by their supposed spouses. Additionally, I need information about their employment, residence, and other relevant details. With access to Sarah's conference schedule, Mark obtained information about upcoming medical education sessions and their locations. This allowed him to establish surveillance plans, including the installation of monitoring equipment in hotel rooms. Mark understood that evidence collected through these means couldn't be used in court, but his goal was to gather comprehensive information that would support a clean divorce settlement. An interesting detail in Sarah's calendar caught our attention. She had exactly 3 medical conferences scheduled before our upcoming 25th wedding anniversary celebration. It struck me that our anniversary would mark the end of our communication as husband and wife. I resolved not to participate in any celebrations with her, as any gifts would be meaningless given the circumstances. This moment would mark the end of my role as a deceived spouse and the beginning of her facing the consequences of her deceptive actions spanning more than 24 years. A week later, we gathered in David's conference room, eagerly awaiting the latest news from Mark's investigation. As I settled in, I reflected on the incredible journey of discovery we'd embarked on together. This group, known among themselves as the Education Team, included individuals from various states who had been brought together over 2 decades ago during an orientation program for new employees of the same healthcare network. When the day of Sarah's final conference arrived, Mark, Derek, David, and I convened to hear the latest updates. Sarah and Henry had occupied adjoining rooms in Washington, while the other group members were dispersed on different floors of the hotel. It was discovered that Sarah and Henry, despite maintaining professional appearances during daytime conference activities, spent their nights together. Despite attending educational sessions with colleagues during the day, they gradually dispersed to their rooms by 10 p.m., not returning until after 2 a.m. The exception was Thursday evening, when all 6 spent the entire night together in the connected rooms. Their interactions in public areas resembled those of professional colleagues, discussing conference content, continuing education requirements, and news about their family's activities. After 24 years of maintaining this double life, concealing their secrets had become second nature. With the aid of Mark's operatives posing as hotel cleaning staff, hair samples, fingerprints, and other evidence were discreetly collected from each participant for comprehensive analysis. Thanks to irrefutable DNA evidence, we had successfully uncovered the complete truth. George Thomas was Madison's biological father. Charles Nixon was Braden's biological father. Sarah had been unable to determine paternity during her pregnancies due to her involvement with multiple partners. The investigation revealed that George Thomas of Richmond, Virginia, had been married for 24 years and had 2 adult children. Similarly, Henry King of Little Rock, Arkansas, was married for 23 years with twin sons who had recently turned 21. Charles Nixon from Columbia, South Carolina, had been married to his high school sweetheart for 25 years and had 1 son. Joyce Hopkins, a nurse educator from Jacksonville, was happily married and preparing to celebrate her 25th wedding anniversary. She was the mother of a 23-year-old son and 21-year-old daughter. Catherine Williams from Knoxville, Tennessee, had been married for 23 years and was the mother of 2 daughters and a son. All members of this group had been married for more than 23 years and appeared to be content with their double lives, just as I once believed about my own marriage until learning the painful reality of my wife's infidelity. Further investigation revealed the complex web of biological relationships within the group. Henry was the biological father of both Joyce's daughter and Catherine's son. Catherine had 2 daughters whose fathers were George and Charles. Joyce was the only woman whose husband was the biological father of at least one of her children. George was Madison's father and also the father of one of Catherine's daughters. Charles was both Braden's biological father and the father of Catherine's youngest daughter. The complexity of these relationships was staggering, and I felt overwhelmed trying to keep track of the connections. Despite knowing that my marriage was over and having processed through various stages of grief, I found the strength to maintain the appearance of a loving husband. It had become a strange game for me, pretending to be affectionate while secretly planning how to expose my future ex-wife who had deceived me for over 24 years. The irony wasn't lost on me. If she could lie to my face for so long, then I could certainly pretend to be a devoted, caring husband for the few months remaining before the confrontation. I took the initiative to contact the spouses of our close-knit group of 6 individuals. I shared with them my plan to surprise Sarah in Orlando in honor of our 25th wedding anniversary and her 25 years of service with the healthcare network. Considering that their spouses had joined the medical center network at the same time as Sarah, I decided their presence would make the celebration more meaningful for everyone. As a gesture of appreciation, I arranged and paid for flights that would be waiting for them at their respective airports. I informed Braden and Madison of the plan to surprise their mother on Wednesday and invited them to meet me in Orlando on Tuesday. Tuesday evening, I gathered with my children and revealed all the details. We spent several hours discussing how I discovered the truth, the evidence I'd gathered, my intentions to confront their mother the next day, and most importantly, how much I cherished them both. During our heartfelt conversation, I told them that while I might not be their biological father, I assured them that I would always be their loving father. We embraced tightly, and tears flowed down our faces. They had many questions, and I tried to answer them honestly without embellishing the painful facts. I asked them not to tell their mother about our conversation, and they both promised to keep our discussion confidential. Looking into their eyes, I said, "I would like you to accompany me tomorrow when I confront your mother and expose this deception. I acknowledge this is a very difficult request, and I apologize if it troubles you." I explained that the truth about their biological parentage would soon become public knowledge, which would undoubtedly bring shame to all of us. If you decide to attend, you'll witness my confrontational attitude toward your mother and her colleagues. I may say things that will embarrass you, but it's important to know that nothing I say will change my feelings toward you both. I continued, "Since you're adults, I cannot legally adopt you, although I would gladly do so if possible. Despite this technicality, I want you to know that I sincerely love you both and will always consider you my children. The decision to attend is yours to make because ultimately, she is your mother. Take your time, think about everything, and make your own choice, knowing that I will love you now and forever." Braden asked with tears in his eyes, "Dad, I understand that Mom loves you and you love her. Can you find the strength in your heart to forgive her and move forward? Why don't you both see a counselor to work through this?" Looking at my children, I struggled to remain calm and composed. How could I rationally answer such an innocent question? Taking a deep breath, I realized that as children, they naturally wanted their parents to stay together and remain a family unit. "Please close your eyes and let me take you on a journey," I said softly. "Imagine that you've met an extraordinary person whom you consider your ideal partner, someone with whom you want to spend the rest of your life. The very thought of being separated from them becomes unbearable." I continued painting the picture. After a magical honeymoon, you both build your careers and over the years have 2 wonderful children. Your life revolves around the happiness and well-being of your family. From soccer practice to school events, you devote your time to supporting your loved ones in their endeavors. Throughout your children's adolescence and into adulthood, you share romantic vacations and intimate dinners with your spouse, cherishing every moment spent together. Embracing your loved ones, you realize they are the most precious treasure in your life. Love for them encourages you to maximize every moment together, even when unexpected work opportunities require brief separations. But wherever you go, your heart yearns to return to the warm embrace of family. Grateful for their presence, you express gratitude every day, knowing that your family brings immense joy and happiness into your life. In this state of contentment and bliss, you find solace believing that life cannot be better. I paused, letting my words sink in while happiness was reflected on their faces. Now, Braden, imagine you're watching a movie featuring your beloved wife. In this scene, she finds herself in a hotel room with 3 men and 2 women. Each woman draws a card from the deck, and your wife's face lights up with delight when she reveals her card. Given this situation, Braden, do you still believe in your wife's love for you? Madison, now imagine your husband as one of the men in this scenario. How do you feel about forgiveness? Are you ready to seek help from a counselor and overcome this problem together? Braden sat there with tears in his eyes, and Madison was sobbing beside him. They both needed time to process my words and regain control of their overwhelming emotions. The truth is, I continued gently, this group had been engaging in these activities for 24 years. We even obtained access to documentation of their most recent encounter in a hotel room just a few miles from where we're sitting. Moreover, I have collected substantial evidence from your mother and her colleagues during their previous conferences. Wouldn't it be devastating to discover that you're not the biological parent of your children? Or even worse, to find out that your spouse is the biological father or mother of someone else's child? What would you feel after learning such revelations? Gathering my thoughts, I continued. The person who is dearer to you than anything else in the world chooses to leave you and your children a day early to participate in these activities with a group of people. Moreover, they decide to extend their stay for additional days solely to continue their secret life. When your spouse returns home, it takes them an entire day to recuperate before they can be intimate with you, the person they claim to love most. How much love, respect, and care do you think they actually feel for their spouse and children? Your mother not only disrespected and lied to me, but also to both of you. Braden, holding back tears, replied, Dad, I've never thought about it from that perspective. You're right. I wouldn't want my wife to treat me that way. I never realized that Mom would prefer to spend extra time with this group instead of being home with us, not to mention the terrible impact it had on you. I love you. I'm not sure I can be present tomorrow, but I'll let you know my decision. Madison spoke up firmly. Dad, I'm deeply sorry for the pain you're experiencing. If my husband ever did this to me and our children, I would definitely make him face the consequences. I'll be there to support you tomorrow. I want to thank you for being such a wonderful father. I love you, she continued. It seems Braden is putting his own comfort ahead of what's right, just like Mom chose her secret life over our family. However, you and I will be there tomorrow. It's time for me to step up and become a responsible adult. I was completely taken aback by Madison's unexpected maturity and strength. Braden's expression showed his internal struggle, but I understood his conflict. I truly loved both of my children, regardless of biology. With a determined look, Madison asked me about the plan of action for tomorrow. I've invited the spouses of all 6 group members to join us tomorrow for what they believe is a surprise celebration. They think we're honoring our 25th wedding anniversary, and since their spouses have been with Sarah's healthcare network all these years, I decided it would be appropriate for them to participate in the celebration. You and Braden are the only ones who know the true nature of tomorrow's event. I want it to be a complete surprise for everyone else. I plan to provide the other spouses with all the evidence I have so they can freely express their emotions and make informed decisions about their unfaithful partners. By the way, don't forget that you have half-siblings that you might want to meet later. All 5 remaining spouses joined us at the hotel in Orlando. We had the opportunity to meet, get acquainted, and share a tense lunch at 2 p.m. Our group, including Braden, who had ultimately decided to come, went to the conference center where Sarah's medical education session was taking place. When we entered the hotel lobby, the rest of my carefully planned group was already waiting. Among them were an attorney from David Richardson's office, Mark's associate, and an experienced videographer. To complete the setup, a florist arrived at 2:30 p.m. to deliver 25 red roses that I had personally ordered. Madison and the other betrayed spouses couldn't help but admire the rose's beauty, though the irony wasn't lost on any of us. Madison's eyes blazed with determination. She was preparing for the upcoming confrontation. Taking a moment to calm myself, I told her that everything was in my hands now. At exactly 2:45 p.m., we proceeded to the conference room, with Madison leading the way and Braden following reluctantly. Carrying the bouquet of 25 roses, I entered Sarah's continuing education session at 3 p.m., accompanied by the videographer. Sarah's face turned crimson when she noticed me approaching with flowers and a smile. I playfully observed that her blush perfectly complemented the roses, which caused nervous laughter from the conference attendees. Smiling, Sarah looked at me and then turned to face the room, introducing me as Mike, my beloved husband. Looking around the conference room, I saw the remaining 5 group members scattered throughout the audience, exactly as I had expected. Returning my attention to Sarah, I said, "I know today is the last day of your continuing education conference, and before you all leave, I'd like to ask for your help in making this day unforgettable for Sarah. This Sunday, we'll be celebrating our wonderful 25th wedding anniversary." As if on cue, the group of betrayed spouses emerged from the hallway, led by Madison. When they entered, the videographer captured a stunning image of Sarah's face. Her expression was absolutely priceless. The members of the secret group seemed to be in a state of complete panic. Grinning broadly, I stood and watched as Madison introduced Sarah to the spouses of her conference colleagues. It was obvious that Madison was relishing the unfolding drama. I had never seen this side of Madison before, and it made me realize her incredible inner strength. "We're celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary this Sunday," I announced to the room, "and I was hoping to enlist your help to make it truly special. Next month, Sarah will also celebrate the 25th anniversary of her employment with Southeastern Regional Medical Center. It's really wonderful when 2 significant milestones happen in such a short period, isn't it?" I continued. Interestingly, around the same time Sarah joined the medical center, George, Henry, Charles, Joyce, and Catherine also began their careers in healthcare. To make this event even more memorable, I've invited their spouses to join us. Our videographer will be recording this special moment, so please take a moment to say a few words to the camera before you leave. I paused and took a deep breath, feeling my pulse begin to slow as I truly appreciated the familiar faces of this incredible group of 6 people. "I'd like to invite George, Henry, Charles, Joyce, and Catherine to come forward and join us at the front of the room." The group moved toward the front, accompanied by confused applause from the other conference attendees. When Madison appeared next to me, I could sense her anticipation for what was coming. Taking her hand in mine, I guided her toward George. In a calm voice, I made the announcement that would shatter everyone's world. "I'd like to introduce George Thomas as Madison's biological father." Sarah's face turned ghostly pale, and George's wife looked at me with disbelief, asking me to repeat my words. "Yes, indeed. George is Madison's biological father," I confirmed. George suddenly found his voice and asked, "Why do you believe I'm her father?" I held out my hand, and the attorney placed 3 legal documents in my palm. Turning to George, I handed him the first document. "This is a petition for a court-ordered paternity test under Georgia state law." Handing him the second document, I continued, "This is a lawsuit demanding 22 years of unpaid child support and compensation for emotional distress." Finally, I handed George a copy of the third lawsuit. This is a legal action against Southeastern Regional Medical Center for violation of the moral conduct clauses in your employment contract. I addressed George's wife directly. I have received DNA analysis results from a reputable laboratory confirming that George is the biological father of Madison. The court-appointed test is merely a procedural requirement. I want to assure you that I have copies of all evidence available for your use at your discretion. The atmosphere in the room became chaotic as the other spouses realized this was not a joyful celebration. Against this backdrop, I found a strange sense of satisfaction in my methodical revelation. Suddenly, Braden approached me, standing at his full height and nodding silently in appreciation. At that moment, when I looked at Braden, I was overwhelmed with a surge of pride and accomplishment. I directed our attention to Charles, intending to introduce him the same way I had introduced Madison to her biological father. "Braden," I said, trying to sound confident, "I want you to meet your biological father, Charles Nixon." There was an eerie silence in the room when Charles's name was pronounced. While his name hung in the air, the attorney calmly handed me the corresponding documents. I carefully went through each page with Charles, repeating the same legal process I had completed with George. Charles's wife, clearly distressed, made sure I had copies of everything for her use. When it became clear that Sarah had only 2 children, a sense of terrible anticipation settled over everyone in the room. Smiling grimly, I made it clear that I wouldn't let the others escape unscathed. They had enjoyed their games, and now it was time to face the consequences. Sarah was sitting in a chair, tears streaming down her face. I announced, "Realizing that my appearance has taken you by surprise, get ready, because the real revelations are about to begin." There was complete silence in the room. Taking a deep breath, I continued revealing secrets that had been buried for decades. "You see, Sarah, Joyce, Catherine, George, Charles, and Henry have been attending these continuing education conferences together for purposes far beyond professional development. This deception has been ongoing for more than 2 decades. I couldn't help but mention Madison, who had turned 22 earlier that year. The truth has finally been revealed, and the consequences are about to manifest. Let me clarify the biological relationships. Henry is the biological father of Joyce's daughter and Catherine's son. George is the biological father of Madison and Catherine's eldest daughter. Charles is the biological father of Braden and Catherine's youngest daughter. I paused for dramatic effect. Surprisingly, Joyce's son is actually her husband's child. Can you imagine? Of the 7 children these 3 women have, only one is actually the child of their spouse. The room erupted in complete chaos. I will not dwell on the rest of the events in detail, but you can imagine the emotional devastation when all the necessary legal documents were distributed and copies were handed over to the betrayed spouses. This led to the complete dissolution of the group of 6 people and their carefully constructed double lives. Handing Sarah the divorce papers, I firmly stated that she should not contact me, return to our home, or attempt to see me again. I couldn't help but express my deep disappointment with her deceitful and destructive actions. Sitting in my hotel room afterward, I spent time reflecting on the events related to Sarah and her accomplices. But my thoughts were interrupted when Madison suddenly appeared beside me. Initially, I had planned to confront Sarah gradually, addressing each member of her group individually and eventually revealing the truth about the children. However, Madison had expressed a strong desire to meet her biological father face to face, and I decided to abandon my original plan and follow her lead. My main goal had been to inform the group that I had discovered their infidelity and expose them to their spouses. I wanted to publicly shame them in front of their colleagues and take legal action by serving them with legal documents. As a result, their spouses were left furious, which brought me a sense of satisfaction and closure. Suddenly, A knock interrupted my thoughts. To my surprise, both of my children were standing at the door, the same children who had helped their mother to her room after the confrontation. After greeting them, Madison hugged me tightly, showing her unwavering love and support. "Dad," she began, acknowledging my reluctance to discuss her mother. "I understand that you don't want to hear about Mom right now, but she's in a very fragile state. I've decided to take her home tomorrow and give her a week to pack her belongings before she finds her own place. Despite everything she's done to our family, I can't help but still love her. I want to be angry with her, but she needs someone's support right now." There was determination in Madison's eyes, and I realized that Sarah was indeed in desperate need of emotional support. I was grateful to Madison for doing what she felt was right for her mother. The last few days have shown me that Madison is an incredibly resilient and strong woman. I thought to myself. Braden approached me and said, "Dad, I love you and I'm disgusted by the way Mom destroyed our family. Can I come home with you tomorrow?" Without hesitation, I happily agreed. "Of course, I'd be glad to have you come home with me." Madison stood up, hugged me, and said, "I'm going to stay the night with Mom. I don't think she should be left alone tonight." As she walked toward the door, her last words were, "Daddy, I love you." Braden and I spent several hours together, sharing a few beers, after which he went to his room for some much-needed rest. 5 years have passed since I exposed the group of 6 individuals, and I'm pleased to report that these years have been prosperous and healing for me. The satisfaction I feel regarding the consequences imposed on this group remains significant. Within the following week, all 6 people were terminated from their positions at Southeastern Regional Medical Center. The healthcare network has a strict moral conduct policy, and their actions violated multiple provisions of their employment contracts. They are now divorced, struggling financially, and dealing with the complete destruction of their carefully constructed lives. Strangely enough, their past continues to haunt them whenever they attempt to rebuild their careers. Background checks and professional references consistently reveal their involvement in the scandal, making it difficult for them to find decent employment in the healthcare field. I would be lying if I said I didn't take some satisfaction in their ongoing difficulties, though I'm not the only factor affecting their situations. Their former spouses and children have varying degrees of contact with them, primarily when financial support is needed. Some of the children are gradually building relationships with their biological fathers, though these relationships remain complicated and strained. When I returned to Atlanta and spent one final night in our family home, I realized I would never be able to live there again. The house was filled with too many memories that I couldn't handle emotionally. In search of a new residence, I temporarily moved into a corporate apartment while looking for the right property. Braden accompanied me back to Atlanta but eventually moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, for his first professional job with a major construction firm. Apparently, his employers are pleased with his performance, as he has already received 3 promotions. He is currently single and actively dating, enjoying both his career and the city of Charlotte. We plan to discuss his possible employment with my construction company this summer. Despite 5 years having passed, his relationship with Sarah remains tense. They occasionally communicate by phone, but it has been a long time since Braden has seen his mother in person. The consequences of exposing the group have had a significant impact on all of us, especially the children. I'm not certain Braden will ever be able to trust someone enough to consider marriage, but I hope time will heal those wounds. Madison brought Sarah to Naples for a week following the confrontation. Sarah's attempts to explain her actions were consistently interrupted by Madison, who insisted she save those conversations for her therapist, as she wasn't interested in listening to what she considered lies. Madison firmly believed she would never find an adequate explanation for Sarah's actions and the subsequent destruction of their family. Sarah was not invited to Madison's private wedding, which took place 2 years later. Currently, Madison and her husband Troy live in Atlanta. Despite my invitations, they prefer not to work for my construction company, though Madison did join the business a year ago as a project coordinator. I appreciate having her nearby, as it turns out she has a natural talent for construction project management. Madison made it clear to Troy from the very beginning what the consequences would be if she ever discovered infidelity. Troy knows exactly what Sarah did and understands the devastating impact of betrayal. After I exposed the group, the betrayed spouses and their children gathered in Atlanta 8 months later. Being around people who had experienced similar emotions and were trying to move forward helped all of us orient ourselves toward healing and rebuilding our lives. The children from all the affected families have established strong connections and continue to communicate regularly. In 3 weeks, we're planning to meet in Charleston for another gathering. It was revealed that when the group began their deceptive activities decades ago, rather than engaging in normal intimate relationships with their spouses, they had essentially formed alternative partnerships within their group. Madison and Braden were actually named after George's mother and father, respectively. This decision by Sarah forever connected her children with their biological father, but when this became known, both Madison and Braden distanced themselves from Sarah even further. Even after 5 years, their relationship with their mother remains strained. Madison occasionally agrees to have lunch with Sarah, but Braden categorically refuses to meet with her. Once, I was deeply in love with Sarah, until I discovered her deception and infidelity. I understand that it's difficult for some people to move forward after such betrayal, but I refuse to remain trapped in the past. Life continues and we have 2 choices: give up or get up and move forward. My children depended on me for strength and guidance, and I depended on them for motivation to rebuild. Sarah and I reached an agreement through our attorneys that she would keep the family house, as she claimed there were too many cherished memories there to part with it. I, on the contrary, needed to create entirely new memories in a different space. Additionally, I settled financial matters with George and Charles. The money they provided through legal settlements was faithfully placed in trust funds for Madison and Braden. My intention was never to profit from their payments, but to ensure they faced meaningful consequences for their actions while securing my children's financial futures. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I decided to start dating again. My primary goal is to find someone special with whom I can share genuine love and build an honest relationship. The key to a full and joyful life is both loving someone and being loved in return. Until that happens, I will patiently search while waiting for Madison to give me grandchildren that I can shower with affection. It's important to note that deceptive actions like adultery and betrayal rarely produce positive results for anyone involved. The cycle of consequences affects not only the immediate participants but ripples through families and communities for years. Sarah's life since the exposure has been particularly difficult. Her relationships with other men have not succeeded, partly due to her reputation and partly due to the emotional damage she sustained. She struggled to find decent employment after her termination from the healthcare system. Sarah eventually found work as a medical records clerk at a small clinic, a dramatic fall from her former position as a continuing education coordinator. Unfortunately, she suffered a serious car accident 6 months ago when she fell asleep at the wheel driving home from a late shift. The injuries were significant, requiring extensive medical treatment and ongoing physical therapy. While I feel no satisfaction in her suffering, I recognize that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences extend far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. The truth is that betrayal creates a destructive cycle that affects everyone it touches. My focus now is on building a positive future for myself and maintaining strong relationships with Madison and Braden, regardless of biology. They are, and always will be, my children in every way that truly matters. My construction business has thrived over the past 5 years, partly because I threw myself into work as a way of healing. We've expanded to include commercial projects throughout Georgia and the Carolinas. The success has been gratifying, but more importantly, it's provided a stable foundation for my new life. I've been dating someone special for the past year, Dr. Jennifer Hayes, a pediatrician I met through Madison's recommendation. She's divorced with 2 teenage children of her own, and she understands the complexities of rebuilding after betrayal. We're taking things slowly, but I'm optimistic about our future together. Madison is expecting her first child in the fall, and I couldn't be more excited about becoming a grandfather. She and Troy have built a strong marriage based on honesty and mutual respect. Everything that Sarah and I should have had but never did. Looking back, I realized that discovering Sarah's betrayal, while devastating at the time, ultimately freed me to find genuine happiness. The pain was necessary to reach the peace I have today. Sometimes the most difficult truths lead to the most beautiful new beginnings. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.